Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the December 3rd, 2018 meeting of the Shawnee Planning Commission. We'll start with roll call. Commissioner Montgomery?
Here.
Commissioner Roth? Commissioner Peterson? Here. Commissioner Willoughby?
Here.
Commissioner Beanhoff is absent. Commissioner Busby is here. Commissioner Wise?
Here.
Commissioner Braley?
Here.
Commissioner Les Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Mudgett? Here. Commissioner John Smith?
Here.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started here, I'd like to acknowledge we have Miss Lisa Brunel, who is the new Ward 3 City Councilman. Welcome to our meeting. We're glad you're on board with the City of Shawnee.
Thank you very much.
Consent agenda. Consent agenda items 1 through 5 are listed under the consent items agenda. Unless there is a request to remove one of these items from the consent agenda, the items will be approved in one motion. Is there a request to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion? Commissioner Peterson?
I move that we pass the consent agenda as written in the notes. Items 1 through 5. Subject to staff approval or comments,
Recommendations.
recommendations.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Willoughby?
I'll second it.
Motion is second to approve the consent agenda as per staff recommendations. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you. New business. Z0918-11. The property is located on the west side of the 6100 block of Flum Road. State zoning law, Kansas 12-757, allows the city to initiate rezoning of property to correct nonconformity within the zoning code. In September of 2014, these properties were included as part of a project known as Cobblestone Court that rezoned 3 duplex and 4 single-family properties to the combination of multifamily and mixed-use zoning designations. Doug?
Good evening, Doug Allman, Community Development staff. You provided an overview of what this is. This is a little unusual. This isn't a rezoning request by an applicant. This is actually an initiation by city staff at the request of the governing body to bring these properties back to their original designation prior to what was called the Cobblestone Project. There was actually a subsequent project that was just approved for final development plan known as Veterans Park that rezoned the majority of the Cobblestone site to PUDMR for that mixed-use development. Well, the remaining portions that were not purchased by that developer remain with a combination of PUDMX and PUDMR zoning, and to be honest with you, the units are going to be intact. They're not going to be removed by any project now. So it makes sense to take them back to their original designation. As Chairman Busby said, 7 properties are really affected. What staff would recommend is that you hold the public hearing and then forward this on to City Council for adoption of a rezoning ordinance. That completes our quick report.
Thank you, Doug. Does the commission have any questions for staff on this? Commissioner Wise?
One item, Doug, just to make note under subject and also under recommendations, it lists Z0918-12 instead of 11.
That's correct. That's a typo. I apologize for that. Both of those numbers should be 091812. And in the recommendation section, when you make, if you decide to go forward with this, when you make your motion, please note the 3 zoning changes that are being recognized in the subject line.
Doug, I have a question for you. If my memory is correct, and although the Planning Commission didn't do it, at one time these properties were listed as blighted?
The properties, I believe, were included in a feasibility study for a TIF project that was for that original Cobblestone. They were shown to be part of the blight study that was necessary for the entire property. That being said, that TIF has been withdrawn by the City Council. Obviously, the properties still have to maintain building code and property maintenance standards, and there aren't any violations that I'm aware of today on those properties.
So out of curiosity, and I don't think it's the planning commission's business, but do we unblight them? Is that the process that goes next?
That's just a term that's used specific to Kansas state law for
Okay.
TIF. I wouldn't say that these are in imminent decline or any issue of property maintenance or
And-
anything like that.
There are people living in them.
My understanding is yes, they're currently all owned. Some are renter occupied and some are owner occupied.
So since it's none of our business, we could proclaim them as unblighted and a wonderful part of our community again?
I think if we rezone them back to their original designation, we're saying that we want them to stay as they are and that they're free to stay as they are today.
Thank you, Doug. Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Peterson?
So just for clarification, because I was not present when that original thing happened, we had to have the blighted as that encompassed the entire acreage, including those residents, whether they fell under that blighted category or not.
Correct.
It was that the larger percentage was.
It's a standard that has to be recognized for a TIF district to be established in the
Right.
state of Kansas. And these were seen as properties that could be redeveloped to a higher and better use as part of that. I honestly don't know why the term blight is used. I would almost use the term underutilized in comparison to the surrounding redevelopment area. But that's the
state
word that the
statute.
state law uses for their consistency findings.
Follow-up question, has any of that designation illy affected those properties or anything like that?
The only thing I could comment that on is they're zoned currently a combination of PUD-DMX, which is our mixed-use zone, mixed-use zone, and there's also zoned, some of them are zoned PUDMR. If they were to burn down under those designations without being returned to either the R1 or the DU district, they could not be rebuilt under their current. They'd have to go through a rezoning to rebuild. There has been other properties in the adjacent area that are non-conforming. They've tried to refinance their loans, and we have to tell the bank that they're non-conforming. And lenders are sometimes a little leery of refinancing a property when they don't have rights to rebuild because they're not properly zoned. So this effort is to make them conforming to use and to make sure that if they were blown down by a tornado or, God forbid, burnt down, that they could build back the asset that they had there today.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff on this matter? Commissioner Montgomery?
So, again, I wasn't here either at the Cobblestone Court project. These properties were going to be acquired as part of that project, and then this new project does not have that same scope?
Correct. That project was bigger in scope. It had a commercial component. There was a tax increment finance district approved by the council to help finance infrastructure costs. These were going to be acquired and redeveloped, if I recall from the plan, a combination of apartments and town, I would call them row houses adjacent to Flum. This project that was just recently approved on consent agenda opted not to purchase these properties. The original developer let the contracts on these properties expire, and they're owned by their original owners today.
Any other questions for staff? If not, at this point in time, since this is a rezoning, we'd be in public hearing. Does anybody from the public wish to come forward and speak on this matter? Seeing as how no one has moved, then at this point in time, we'll close the public hearing. We'll be in commission discussion. Well, hearing all the discussion, I hate to cut it off this quick, but if we have no further discussion, then would someone please care to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Smith.
thank you, sir. I move that we recommend approval of Z0918-12, rezoning from PUD-MX and PUD-MR to DU, PUD-MX to R1, and PUD-MR to R1, subject to staff conditions listed in the staff report.
Is there a second? Commissioner Wise.
I'll second the motion.
There's a second and a motion for approval of Z0918-12 rezoning from planned unit development mixed use, PUDMR to DU, PUDMX to R1, and PUDMR to R1. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you. Next, we're into other business. Does the staff have anything for the commissioners?
That at your December 17th meeting, it will be a fairly lengthy agenda. We will have the Belmont rezoning mixed-use project on that agenda. The notifications have been sent out, and so we will be bringing that plan forward to you. And there are other items on that agenda as well. So we hope everyone can attend.
Does the commission have anything for staff? Commissioner, I have a couple of things. First of all, either we have the three youngest developers in Shawnee sitting there, or students from the Shawnee Mission Northwest for your class? Government class. Wonderful, you picked a good meeting. We'll be out of here in another 5 minutes. A couple things I have is I was approached by somebody on city staff asking a couple questions that I want to present to you now, and then I think we'll deal with them in the first meeting in January. First off is most of the county or the governing body meets at 7 o'clock. Most of the committees and stuff meet at 7 o'clock. We've traditionally met at 7:30. And I think we need to look and see, would we agree to moving to 7 o'clock or keep it at 7:30? And I'm bringing these two up and everybody can think about it. The other one might be a little more interesting, and that's the standpoint that we are one of the few cities that reads the entire presentation from city staff. And the question would be, is the technical information that the staff reads to us, is that something that we would consider leaving a bunch of that out? And I think if I'm remembering right, that what might happen is we would get the normal reports as we do, all the way through with it, and then have an abridged section presented in the meeting, so we're not having 35 minutes of reading. So those are two things that I think I'd like to say, is you can do some thinking about it, and then we'll bring it up in the first meeting in January. That sound right, Doug?
That's correct. And as at staff level, we're more than willing to continue doing what we've been doing. We're very flexible. We'll meet at 7, we'll meet at 7:30, we'll provide the long report, we'll do an amended report. Will do whatever you want us to do, but if you'll give us that guidance, we'll follow through with that and try to satisfy whatever you guys decide you want.
Commissioner Roth?
Along those lines, is there any way to maybe limit, or I think this is a lot of paper that we could maybe get rid of. Is there a possibility of, let's just get rid of that and do it all electronically or by person, or?
That would be something, if you wanted to ponder that and talk about at the January meeting. That's kind of an old school approach as well. A lot of people are going to electronic plans. We're actually doing electronic plan review now in our department and our cross-departmental team. Obviously, the packets are available online, but some people like to put out a set of plans and read them. And so what we might do is, if we got a show of hands of who wanted hard copies, even if we only started taking in 6 instead of the original 18 and then 13 more, it might save a few trees down the road. So we're willing to do both. We're flexible enough to provide electronic or paper copies. But if you're saying some of you don't need them or even use them, then we would just assume not. Number one, developer cost of having to prepare those plans. And 2, just the fact that it's a little bit wasteful. And we're trying to be sustainable all the time. So think about it, and we'll do what you guys want us to do.
Commissioner Roth, would you like that to put on that, what we talk about on that first meeting?
That'd be perfect. I
All right.
appreciate it, yeah.
We'll have all
Thank you.
3 of those items. Commissioner Peterson, you have something?
Well, my
Yes. Well, we could adopt the council format of presentation. They actually have the electronic agenda online on a laptop computer, and we have the attachments scanned in. If you got on the website now, obviously you guys have checked it. Everything that's in your packet is on that site, and we can project those images through a computer to the screens. So we could absolutely do that. This is kind of, like I said, kind of the old school method where we're still using an overhead projector essentially.
Commission. I'm sorry? Very fine, we'll put them on the first meeting in January.
And we'll do that in other business if that's okay, rather than having them as an agenda item.
Excellent, that makes perfect sense. Anything else from the commissioners? Commissioner Willoughby?
I move for adjournment.
That was sudden. I was having fun. Is there a second?
I know.
Commissioner Brayley?
I'd like to second that motion.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We're done. Thank you. And thank you all in the audience for being here. We do enjoy you all here.